Okay, so let's jump right in. Most of us, we've heard the creation story from Genesis, but we're often taught to read it like it's just a simple list of events. Today, we're going to look at Genesis chapter 1 a little differently, not just as a story, but as this incredible piece of ancient literature with a hidden structure and a really powerful rhythm.
And that's really the perfect way to think about it, isn't it? It's a composition, a poetic and superstructured piece that was designed to be heard and felt. And just like any great symphony, it's got movements, it has refrains, and it builds to this grand finale. So let's try and listen for that deeper rhythm.
Because that's really the core of what we're talking about today. There isn't just one single ancient interpretation of this foundational text. We're going to explore two really powerful and historic readings. The one that's probably familiar to a lot of us through the King James Version, and an even older tradition from the Ethiopian Orthodox Church.
To really get the story, we first have to understand the problem it's trying to solve. The whole narrative kicks off before the beginning in a world that's described as without form and void. And that doesn't just mean empty, it means a world with absolutely no order at all.
The original Hebrew gives us this amazing phrase, tohu wabohu. It just paints this picture of total chaos and, well, primordial emptiness. Imagine a painter's canvas before the first stroke. But then imagine that even the canvas itself doesn't have a shape. That's our starting point. So how does God solve this problem of tohu wabohu? Well, the narrative lays out this brilliant two-part plan that unfolds over 6 days. First, God tackles the formless problem by creating order and boundaries. Then, he solves the void problem by filling those brand new ordered spaces with life. Let's just look at that first phase, the forming. On day 1, God separates light from dark, which creates the very idea of time. On day 2, he separates the waters above from the waters below, creating an expanse. He's basically carving out a breathable bubble for life to exist in. And then, on day 3, he gathers the waters so dry land can appear and tells it to produce vegetation. Okay, the stage is officially set. So now that the rooms of creation are built, we move into the second half of the week. God starts to populate, or fill, the orderly spaces he just made. And this is where the symphony's structure becomes just so elegant.
And this slide just reveals that beautiful parallel structure. I mean, look at this. Notice how day 4 fills the space created on day 1. The sun, moon, and stars populate the realms of day and night. Then day 5 perfectly fills day 2, with birds and fish taking over the sky and seas. And finally, day 6 fills day 3, as animals and humans are placed on the dry land. It's a perfect intentional design. It just clicks.
But, and this is a big but, this elegant architectural view, the one we mostly get from the King James tradition, is just one way to hear the symphony. There's another, older version, one preserved in the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition, that tells a story that feels, well, a lot more populated right from the very beginning.
Populated? What do I mean by that? We'll get a load of this number. While the KJV account feels like a pretty straightforward 6-day work week, the Ethiopian tradition teaches that there were actually 22 distinct works of creation performed during those 6 days.
And this just shows you the difference immediately. On day 1 alone, the Ethiopian tradition counts 7 separate acts of creation. It's not just light and darkness. It's also heaven, earth, the abyss, the spirit, and, this is crucial, the angelic hosts. So in this telling, the angels are created on the very first day, and they get to witness everything that comes next.
And all of this builds to the climax of the story. Day 6. This is the main event, the moment everything has been leading up to. And it's right here that the differences between these two ancient traditions become the most profound, especially when it comes to the creation of humanity.
So the key moment is in Genesis 1:26, when God says, "Let us make man in our image." Now, in the KJV tradition, that us is usually understood as an internal conversation within the Holy Trinity. But in the Ethiopian perspective, it's a bit more layered. God is speaking as the Trinity, sure, but he's doing it in the presence of that heavenly court of angels created back on day 1. Humanity is being introduced to a pre-existing cosmic family. And what about humanity's job? The KJV uses some pretty powerful language. Subdue the earth and have dominion. The Hebrew root for subdue, kobash, can be really strong, almost implying conquest. The Ethiopian tradition, though, emphasizes peaceful governance. In this view, our role isn't as a conqueror, but as the priest of creation, a steward whose job is to lead all of creation in the silent liturgy of praise back to God.
This table really sums it all up perfectly, doesn't it? The KJV's internal Trinitarian discussion versus the Ethiopian tradition's heavenly court, the language of subduing and controlling versus peaceful stewardship. And our status, are we a little lower than the angels, or are we the seal, the crown of all 22 works of creation? These are two very different pictures of our place in the cosmos.
So as we pull back, we can see that these aren't just minor differences in translation. They present two fundamentally different visions of the universe, and of God's relationship to it. What kind of world is actually being described here?
The KJV gives us God as a supreme architect, logical, orderly, sovereignly speaking a structured cosmos into existence. The Ethiopian Bible, on the other hand, gives us God as a cosmic king, creating while surrounded by a heavenly court, pulling this complex, living, and already populated spiritual world out of the abyss. To put it another way, one reading of the symphony gives us a clean, elegant blueprint for the universe. The other gives us a vibrant, crowded, living courtroom filled with witnesses from the very first note.
And that leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. Is our role to be the deputy of an architect, tasked with subduing and managing a project, or are we the priests of a kingdom, tasked with stewarding and leading a cosmic choir in praise? Which story of creation shapes how we see our world and our role in it today?